Welcome to That Police Officer's channel. Today we're examining a deeply concerning case that challenges our understanding of property disputes and their tragic escalations. What started as a disagreement over something as mundane as a thermostat setting ended in an inexplicable act of violence that shook the entire Miami community. On a seemingly ordinary Saturday morning in Westchester, just outside downtown Miami, law enforcement responded to what would become one of the most perplexing cases of landlord-tenant disputes turned deadly. The date was January 25, 2025, and the call came in at approximately 8 a.m. What makes this case particularly disturbing is not just the nature of the crime, but the sequence of events that led to it. As a veteran officer who has investigated numerous homicides, I can tell you that this case stands out for its unusual catalyst. We're talking about a 37-year-old landlord, Adam Lewis Anson, whose actions that morning would forever change multiple lives. The victim was a 57-year-old tenant, and while we'll delve deeper into the details later in our analysis, I want you to consider this. What could possibly escalate a dispute about indoor temperature to the point of no return? The investigation revealed a series of events that began with a knock on a window and ended in tragedy. But there's more to this story than what initially meets the eye. Throughout today's analysis, we'll examine the crucial evidence that led to the charges of second-degree murder and burglary with armed assault or battery. What's particularly noteworthy about this case, and something we'll explore in detail later, is the suspect's behavior immediately following the incident. His actions in those crucial moments after the shooting provide fascinating insights into his state of mind, details that would prove vital to our investigation. As we continue to examine this case, we will explore several key elements that played a crucial role in the outcome. First, we will assess the significance of premeditation, considering whether the events leading up to the shooting were planned or impulsive. We'll also examine the impact of weapon possession during what was initially a civil dispute, and how it influenced the escalation of the situation. Additionally, we'll dive into the legal complexities surrounding landlord-tenant rights, particularly in the context of this violent encounter. The timeline of events, from the initial confrontation to the fatal shooting, will be carefully analyzed to uncover how everything unfolded. Lastly, we'll look into the psychological aspects of the perpetrator's behavior after the incident, as his actions in the aftermath may provide key insights into his state of mind. But before we go deeper into these elements, it's important to note that this case represents a stark reminder of how quickly situations can escalate when firearms are introduced into civil disputes. As a law enforcement officer, I've seen countless arguments spiral out of control, but few match the senseless nature of this incident. In the coming segments, we'll break down the investigation step by step, examining the evidence that led to the arrest, the forensic findings that supported our case, and the legal proceedings that followed. We'll also discuss the broader implications this case has for property owners and tenants alike. Stay with us as we unravel this tragic case that has sent shockwaves through the Miami-Dade community. In our next segment, we'll begin our detailed analysis of the crime scene and the initial response that set this investigation in motion. Remember, while we handle serious subject matter, our goal is to educate and prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. The details of this case, while disturbing, serve as crucial learning points for law enforcement, property owners, and the general public alike. Consider subscribing to never miss stories like this. Let's begin our deep dive into one of Miami's most troubling cases of 2025. The incident occurred on January 25, 2025, in a residential property situated approximately 12 miles from downtown Miami. This location would become the focal point of our investigation into what initially appeared to be a landlord-tenant dispute, but evolved into something far more serious. The property in question consisted of two distinct living spaces, the landlord's primary residence and an adjoining apartment unit occupied by the tenant. This architectural arrangement would prove significant in understanding the dynamics that led to the tragic events of that morning. At approximately 8 a.m., our department received a 911 call that would initiate one of our most distinctive investigations. The caller was the property owner himself, who had just committed an act that would transform a civil dispute into a criminal case. What distinguishes this case from typical landlord-tenant conflicts is not merely its tragic outcome, but the seemingly trivial nature of its catalyst, a thermostat setting in a hallway. The investigation centered on a 37-year-old property owner who approached his tenant's residence armed with a semi-automatic pistol. The presence of the weapon at this early stage raises significant questions about premeditation and intent, aspects we will examine more thoroughly in our subsequent analysis. The victim was a 57-year-old tenant who resided in the auxiliary apartment. Our preliminary investigation indicated that the confrontation began with the landlord attempting to gain entry through the tenant's window, an action that immediately elevated the severity of the incident from a civil matter to a potential criminal offense. What makes this case particularly noteworthy from a law enforcement perspective is the sequence of events that followed. The confrontation progressed from a dispute over climate control to physical altercation and ultimately to the use of deadly force. The progression of events, the weapon's presence, and the subsequent actions of the suspect all contribute to a complex case that challenges conventional understanding of property-related disputes. The Miami-Dade County Sheriff's Office's response to this incident was immediate and comprehensive. Upon arrival, our officers encountered a scene that would require careful documentation and analysis. The evidence collected would prove crucial in understanding not only what transpired, but also the underlying motivations that led to this tragic outcome. In the hours following the incident, the case quickly evolved from a shooting investigation to a second-degree murder case, accompanied by additional charges of burglary with armed assault or battery. These charges reflect the gravity of the actions taken and the evidence gathered at the scene. As we proceed with our analysis, we will examine the methodical process of evidence collection, witness interviews, and the crucial timeline that led to the filing of formal charges. The legal proceedings that followed would reveal additional layers of complexity in this case, highlighting important considerations about property rights, self-defense claims, and the limits of landlord authority. This case serves as a sobering reminder of how quickly property disputes can escalate when firearms are introduced into the equation. In our next segment, we will delve deeper into the critical evidence that shaped our investigation and the specific factors that led to the charges being filed. Stay with us as we continue our examination of this significant case that has implications for property owners, tenants, and law enforcement agencies across the country. Upon arrival at the Westchester residence, our first priority was securing the scene and establishing a perimeter. The 911 call had come from the suspect himself, which created an unusual dynamic for our initial response. The presence of an armed individual who had already admitted to discharging a firearm required careful tactical consideration. Our investigation began with the immediate preservation of two critical areas: the backyard where the shooting occurred and the apartment unit where the initial confrontation took place. The crime scene unit was promptly dispatched to document and collect evidence from both locations. The thermostat, which became a crucial piece of evidence, was photographed and its settings documented before any changes could be made. A particularly significant aspect of our investigation was the recovery of the semi-automatic pistol used in the incident. The weapon's location, condition, and number of discharged rounds provided vital information about the sequence of events. Shell casings recovered from the backyard helped us reconstruct the shooting's trajectory and confirmed multiple shots were fired at close range. The suspect's decision to adjust the thermostat after the shooting became a crucial element in our investigation. This action, seemingly mundane in isolation, provided valuable insights into his state of mind and potentially undermined his subsequent self-defense claim. Our forensics team carefully documented the thermostat settings and collected fingerprint evidence from the control panel. Witness interviews proved particularly challenging in this case. The early morning timing meant many neighbors were still asleep when the incident occurred. However, those who were awake provided crucial testimony about hearing the initial confrontation and subsequent gunshots. Their statements helped establish a precise timeline of events. The suspect's 911 call presented interesting elements for our investigation. The recording captured his immediate claims of self-defense, but the physical evidence at the scene told a different story. The disconnect between his account and the forensic evidence became a central focus of our investigation. Blood pattern analysis in the backyard revealed crucial details about the victim's position during the shooting. The evidence suggested the victim was in a defensive posture, contradicting the suspect's initial statement about being attacked. This physical evidence, combined with the victim's multiple gunshot wounds to the head, significantly impacted our assessment of the self-defense claim. Our investigation also focused on establishing the history between the landlord and tenant. Records of previous disputes, communications, and any formal complaints were carefully examined. This background information proved valuable in understanding the context of the confrontation and potential motivations. The suspect's decision to arm himself before approaching the tenant's window became a critical point in our investigation. This premeditated action, combined with evidence of forced entry, substantially influenced the charges that would ultimately be filed. Documentation of the victim's injuries by our forensics team and the medical examiner provided crucial evidence about the manner of death. The multiple gunshot wounds to the head indicated an intent that went beyond self-defense, supporting the second-degree murder charge. As we compiled our findings, the evidence painted a clear picture of escalation from a civil dispute to a deadly confrontation. The suspect's actions before, during, and after the shooting created a timeline that significantly challenged his self-defense narrative. The investigation culminated in the filing of formal charges, supported by physical evidence, witness statements, and forensic analysis. The thoroughness of our investigation would prove crucial in the subsequent legal proceedings, providing a solid foundation for the prosecution's case. Next, we'll examine how this evidence translated into specific criminal charges and explore the legal implications of this tragic incident. The legal proceedings in this case commenced immediately following the arrest on January 25, 2025. The suspect was taken into custody at the scene and transported to Miami-Dade County Jail, where he was processed and formally charged with second-degree murder and burglary with armed assault or battery. The charging decision reflected the gravity of the evidence collected during our investigation. The prosecution's case centered on several key elements: the premeditated decision to approach the tenant's residence while armed, the forced entry into the apartment, and the excessive use of force resulting in multiple gunshot wounds to the victim's head. During the initial court appearance, the defense presented a self-defense argument, citing Florida's Stand Your Ground law. However, this claim faced significant challenges when confronted with the physical evidence. The prosecution effectively demonstrated that the suspect's actions, particularly entering the tenant's residence armed and subsequently dragging him outside, undermined any legitimate claim to self-defense. A critical moment in the proceedings came during the preliminary hearing when the prosecution presented the timeline of events. The suspect's action of returning to adjust the thermostat after the shooting proved particularly damaging to his defense. This behavior, seemingly trivial, demonstrated a state of mind inconsistent with someone who had just acted in legitimate self-defense. The bail hearing revealed additional complexities in the case. Despite the defense's arguments about the suspect's ties to the community and lack of prior criminal record, the court deemed him a potential flight risk. The severity of the charges and the nature of the evidence led to the denial of bail, ensuring the suspect remained in custody pending trial. The grand jury proceedings brought forth additional evidence not previously disclosed to the public. Testimony from neighboring tenants revealed a pattern of controlling behavior regarding the property's utilities, though no previous incidents had escalated to violence. This background information provided crucial context for understanding the events that led to the shooting. As the case progresses toward trial, scheduled for later this year, several pretrial motions have already shaped its direction. The defense's attempt to suppress the 911 call was denied, allowing prosecutors to present this crucial piece of evidence to the jury. The call's contents, particularly the suspect's immediate claim of self-defense followed by his admission of adjusting the thermostat, are expected to play a significant role in the trial. The victim's family has maintained a strong presence throughout the proceedings, their grief palpable in the courtroom. Their impact statements during preliminary hearings have highlighted the profound loss suffered by the community and emphasized the need for justice in what appears to be a senseless act of violence. The legal proceedings have drawn significant attention from property owners' associations and tenants' rights groups, both recognizing the broader implications of this case for landlord-tenant relations. Their presence in the courtroom underscores how this case might influence future property management practices and tenant protection measures. The prosecution has indicated their intention to seek the maximum penalty available under Florida law for second-degree murder. If convicted, the suspect faces a potential life sentence, with the armed burglary charge carrying additional significant penalties. This case serves as a sobering reminder of how civil disputes can escalate to tragic conclusions when firearms are introduced into the equation. The legal proceedings thus far have emphasized the importance of proper conflict resolution channels and the severe consequences of circumventing them. Our next segment will examine the broader implications this case has for property management practices and community safety measures. This case stands as a stark reminder of how quickly ordinary situations can spiral into irrevocable tragedy. As law enforcement officers, we frequently mediate landlord-tenant disputes, but this incident transcends typical property disagreements, revealing deeper issues about power dynamics, conflict resolution, and the responsible ownership of firearms. The impact of this case extends far beyond the immediate parties involved. A community has lost a member over what began as a disagreement about indoor temperature control. The victim's family must now navigate life without their loved one, their grief compounded by the senseless nature of his death. Every time they pass a thermostat, they're reminded of how a commonplace object became the catalyst for an unthinkable tragedy. For property owners and tenants across Miami-Dade County, this case has prompted serious discussions about rights, responsibilities, and conflict resolution. Local property management associations have already begun revising their guidelines, implementing stricter protocols for handling disputes. Several community organizations have initiated programs focusing on de-escalation techniques and proper channels for addressing property-related conflicts. From a law enforcement perspective, this case underscores the critical importance of early intervention in civil disputes. It highlights the need for better education about landlord-tenant rights and the establishment of clear boundaries in property management. The presence of a firearm in what should have been, at most, a civil matter transformed a resolvable situation into an irreversible tragedy. The broader implications for public safety are significant. This case demonstrates how quickly authority can be misused when combined with deadly force. It serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of taking property rights enforcement into one's own hands, bypassing established legal channels for conflict resolution. As we conclude our examination of this case, we must remember that behind the legal proceedings and investigation lies a fundamental truth. No thermostat setting, no property dispute, no moment of anger is worth the cost of a human life. This case will likely influence property management practices and tenant protection measures for years to come. To our viewers who might find themselves in similar disputes, remember that there are always alternatives to confrontation. Utilize proper legal channels, seek mediation, and never let property disagreements escalate to physical confrontation. Your life and the lives of others are worth more than any property dispute. If you found this analysis valuable, please support our channel by subscribing and hitting the notification bell. Share this video with property owners and tenants alike. Your action could prevent another tragedy. Remember to follow us on all social media platforms for updates on similar cases and law enforcement insights. This is That Police Officer, reminding you that justice serves not just to punish, but to prevent. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you in our next investigation.